question 5. Okay, so this is the other hypothesis test that you have to do. So this is seeing whether the correlation value is enough to actually imply that there is correlation going on. So we've got a scatter diagram showing sugar consumption compared to rate of disease of a particular disease. It doesn't say. We've got a random sample of 22 countries, and it looks very much like there is a trend. Okay. We're told the product moment correlation coefficient is 0.893. Okay. So we're looking for a hypothesis test which should show the data does suggest there is a link between. Okay. So our first step again is to write down our H0 and our H1. The symbol we use here is the Greek letter rho. Okay, that's the correlation symbol. You can put this in words, but it's probably safer to do it in symbols. H0 is always that there is no correlation between these two quantities. Okay. H1 depends on the wording you're looking for in the question. It does not depend on what you can see in the scatter diagram, because when you look at the words, in the very first paragraph, it says we're investigating possible links, but it doesn't say that we think that is a positive correlation. Okay. And here, there is a link, not a positive correlation. Even though it looks like we can see a positive correlation, there's nothing in the wording. We are looking for either rho is 0 or rho is not 0. Okay. So it's a bit of a sneaky one, but this is a two-tailed test. So don't use what you can see on the scatter diagram and just assume it's going to be a greater than 0. Okay, that's the first thing. Right, the next step is we write down our test statistic. Now, we don't actually have to do any working out for this. It's in the question. It's this number here. Okay, sometimes we are given r squared and we have to square root it because we want to say the value of r is our test statistic. But here it's quite clear and stated. Okay, then we look up the critical value. So you would need stats tables, which you can find online, or you can, obviously you'll have them next to you in the exam. You get to the table of critical values that talk about the product moment correlation coefficient, and you make sure you're looking down the correct column. So you need the column that says 5% two-tailed. There'll be a 5% one-tail, and then there's a 5% two-tailed column. So make sure you're looking down there and you're looking for n equals 22, and your critical value, as you look it up, should be 0.5368. Okay, I haven't got that to show you at the moment, but you can find it for yourself fairly easily. Okay, so on our scale of correlation, which goes from -1 to +1, and 0 in the middle for no correlation, our critical value is 0.5368, which is maybe about there. Okay, so anywhere from the critical value out to the side is what we call the critical region. And if our test statistic falls into the critical region, then it is big enough to show correlation. Okay, so our test statistic is definitely big enough. So generally with this question, with this hypothesis test, all you're really saying is the correlation value big enough to show correlation, or positive correlation, or negative correlation? Okay, and the answer here is yes, it is. So if your test statistic is big enough to show correlation, you can reject H0. Okay, you don't want to say there's no correlation anymore because it's showing correlation. So you reject H0, and you can say the data does suggest I'm not even going to say positive correlation here, because I was just saying that H1 is that there is not zero correlation, if you see what I mean. So let's say the data does suggest a link between sugar consumption and population with the disease. Okay, and that's all we need to do.